Please welcome Pascale Arpin.
Hi! Oh my god, okay, how does this work? Boom. Hi everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I'm also so nervous, so I'm just gonna go. Thank you, Mick and Bex. That was awesome. And now it's my turn. So, like Izzy mentioned, the last time I talked at the Ottawa Design Club was on December 17, 2020, for their event number 0001. That's pretty big. I'm a day one. So at this point, I'd been back in Ottawa for about 4 years since leaving Nunavut. I was in my full-blown sign painting era. I had toured the US with my sign painting mentor on and off for 3 years. I had traveled to Vegas to work for Tim Burton at the Las Vegas Neon Museum. And I had finished illustrating Phantom Tids Volume 1, and it was finally out in the world. And I still found time to play guitar in my band, Ultra Love. So you can say that I had been busy. In 2020, I ended my talk by showing pieces I had just finished, as I was teaching myself to use oil paint. I ended my presentation by saying that I didn't know exactly where this would lead, but that I knew that no matter what, I'd rather be painting. Standing here now, 5 years later, I can say that that statement could not be more true today. I had originally written out lots of details about my sign painting work during the pandemic, how busy I was during those difficult few years of deep global uncertainty and fear. But stepping back, I think a lot of the specifics are a bit irrelevant. And those who've been following me for a while already know how many windows and signs I painted during that strange time. So, in a nutshell, here's what happened. I worked too much, I didn't sleep enough, I didn't fuel my body properly, and surprise, I began to experience the early signs of the dreaded burnout. One of the ways I knew something was wrong is that I got really annoyed when people asked me to do the thing that I advertised I did. I would get an email from a client wanting a sign, and I would literally feel so much anxiety and frustration. To make matters worse, I would be paralyzed when it came to actually answering those emails. I couldn't really explain why I felt that way until I ran into my friend and animator, Tom Pascale, at a coffee shop one day, and he dropped some real wisdom on me when I explained my frustration. He said, "If you're rolling your eyes at more than 50% of the emails that come in, you're the problem. And you should probably take a break." Boom. That hit. I was the problem. I was overwhelmed. I always felt like I was behind the 8 ball. I'd been building this business for years. I'd been hustling like an absolute maniac to build it out of nothing. And here I was, ready to just burn it to the ground. So I took Tom's advice to heart, and after some humming and hawing, I decided to, well, disappear for a little bit. I don't know how to make... It's very important that play. I knew that if I stayed in Ottawa, I would work. So I picked somewhere far and warm. I got a tourism visa, and I started to let clients know that I'd be back in the spring. And the truth is, I felt so much guilt about leaving, about not being available. What will my clients think? Will they ever forgive me? Will I ever regain momentum? As guilty as I felt, the irony is I wished I could have kept kept building on this incredible sign painting momentum. But life had basically made that decision for me. I had to take a break and put my health first. So by December 2022, I had locked up my studio and escaped to Nice in the south of France, where I'd rented a studio apartment for 4 months, which turned into 5. The place that I'd found had a nice big window and enough room for a small easel. This was going to be my chance to finally take a break from work and focus on my own art. This was huge if you consider that I had never actually stopped working since my very first job at Beaver Tails at the age of 13. 13. Seeing as this would be my first time ever just making art, I began my Euro exile with one big question in mind. Would I enjoy painting my own art every day? The answer, I'm happy to say, was a resounding yes. It's also worth noting that a month into my trip, I found out I'd been awarded a creation grant from the Ontario Arts Council, which really helped financially and helped validate this whole experiment. So, after 5 dreamy months, when it came time to come home, I was very sad and already planning to come back to Europe basically as soon as possible. I came back to Ottawa and picked up some really fun sign painting gigs right away. I realized clients were totally fine waiting a few months for me to come back, and most importantly, that the world had kept turning. During that time, I was mostly staying in my sister's basement, and then I got to spend 6 weeks in New York City for a summer residency program at the New York Academy of Art. This experience really solidified my desire to continue learning new techniques and continue pushing my own personal painting practice. While things felt pretty good back home, I'd made a promise to myself to remember how I'd felt in Europe and not get sucked back into my old routine. So I started the process of emptying my studio, and also I just realized it's doing this like crazy thing. Izzy, I don't know what happened in the... I never intended for that. It's not my aesthetic. Please. I don't know what that is. Anyway, I thought maybe it was just on the screen and then I caught it in the corner of my eye. Anyway, apologies. I am not a tech person. Anyway, exactly 1 year after my first disappearing act, I disappeared again. Except this time, I wasn't really planning on coming back. I'd sold my van. I'd mostly emptied out my studio and passed it on to another artist. I'd even put the wheels in motion to sell my cute little condo. I was untethered. For my second Euro exodus, I ended up in Athens, then back in Nice, and then also in Berlin. They were some of the most incredible months of my life. I painted lots, I traveled, I made amazing friends. In May, little victories flew me home to do a guild, and I zipped right back to Europe. Life felt like a wild dream. And in a way, it was, because shortly thereafter, I was forced to wake up. And for the most boring reasons imaginable. I was abruptly faced with a plot twist. I could stay in Europe and face a very complicated tax/emigration situation due to having sold my condo while living abroad, or I could come home before reaching the 183-day residency limit. Ironically, I sold my condo to make money so that I could keep the Euro dream alive. And needless to say, that backfired. So, much to everyone's surprise, including my own, I came home. To soften the blow of coming back to North America, I decided to go to Montreal. I found a basement sublet where I set up a makeshift studio in the living room, and I was determined to keep the same routine where I was painting as much as possible. Now that my Euro dream had come to a hard stop, I needed to figure out what to do next. Would I go back to sign painting full time? How could I make this pivot towards painting my own art more real, more permanent, and more serious? What was I missing in my arsenal to make it to the big leagues? One thing stuck out. The perpetual thorn in my side as a self-taught artist. I had never been to art school. Statistically, the majority of successful visual artists have a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and most also have a Master of Fine Arts, which I think says more about how institutionalized the art world is rather than about talent or potential. But in any case, I knew that not having gone to art school had probably hurt my career in some ways. So I made the decision that I would finally be going to art school. Explosion. Now I'm just accepting it. But not just any school. If I was going to do this, I wanted to go to one of those American schools I've always dreamed of attending. I could finally put my Bachelor of Humanities to use and apply for an MFA. So with a wish and a prayer, I started the lengthy process of grad school applications. I went to an MFA Open Doors event in Chicago. I participated in portfolio reviews. I gathered reference letters, including from a professor I had 15 years ago. Remember me? I requested transcripts. I had interviews with chairs of departments. I communicated with faculty to ask them all of my burning questions about the programs. And above all, I wrote a lot of applications to the schools and to scholarships. I was doing this. It's worth noting that when it came time to writing these applications, my brain felt like a weak muscle. The same feeling like when you haven't jogged in a while. And if anything, this confirmed how much I needed this kind of mental exercise and how beneficial school would be for me at this stage. I also felt incredibly out of my element, unprepared even. Where I felt tremendous expertise as a sign painter, all of a sudden, in the eyes of art academics, I was nobody and self-taught. Regardless, I applied to 4 schools. And then I waited for answers and waited and spiraled and waited. When I finally heard back around February, I hadn't gotten into Yale or RISD, but I had been accepted into my top choices, the New York Academy of Art and the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Okay, so I'm in. But now, the money. When it really came down to it, I would need at the very minimum 80,000 Canadian per year to cover tuition and living expenses. And that's with the scholarship the school had offered me. But I was still waiting to hear back from this one big Canadian scholarship that could make this dream a reality. And I did not get it. So now my dream was at my fingertips, but remained completely unaffordable. And to make matters worse, as I was trying to decide whether or not to go into major debt to pursue this dream, well, Trump was happening. Yeah, really wish there was not the artifice at this moment. By the time I was receiving offers of admission from schools, he was already fully wreaking havoc. Students were having their visas revoked for pro-Palestinian and anti-American sentiments, and the iron fist of the new administration was coming down harder by the day. So now I was faced with fully indebting myself and a completely volatile and brutal administration. There was no way I could go through with this plan. Not now, at least. Maybe in a few years, but even then, who could say? So I rejected the MFA offers. In a perfect world, with that big Canadian scholarship and no geopolitical insanity, I would have said yes in a heartbeat. But now everything was feeling too uncertain, too fucked up. Would I even be able to create under those stressful conditions? I'd spent months, I'd spent months weighing pros and cons about this school or that school, that program or that program, and I'd been gearing myself up for another massive life shift, so it didn't matter that I was living in a shit sublet with my whole life in storage and no real work prospects. I had been completely committed to this goal. So when all of this momentum I'd been building up in my mind came to a dead stop, I felt completely deflated right along with my dream. Despite feeling such deep disappointment, I still felt like I'd made the right call. So, completely overcome with decision fatigue, I gave myself permission to just coast for a little bit and to try to not plan any big life decisions for a while. The rest of the year after that was, well, weird. Not only did I feel aimless for the first time in a long time, but basically one thing after another happened that just made me feel less in control than ever. Health problems, a polyp causing me unbearable pain, and tumors in my liver. But I'm better now, having had surgery. Lease transfer in Montreal that fell through because of a shitty landlord and scrambling to find a place to live. Deciding to move back to Ottawa in April for a big contract that ended up getting pushed to September. Moving in and out of sublets at the mercy of the owner's plans. And at one point I moved 3 times in 2 months, but thankfully I had packing my suitcase down to a science by then. And having my heart absolutely crushed by someone who promised me the moon. These are just some of the things that felt like they were kind of just happening to me. Like they were out of my control and in a way that made it easier to accept. In fact, the shit just continuously piling up made me a lot more zen as a result. Whenever something out of my control would happen, I just started saying, well, that's life. Sure, when things are rosy and perfect, that's life. But when things go wrong, that's life too. So there I was, that's lifing, left, right, and center, still floating, still trying to figure out how I would make it into the art world. And then, in the depths of my confused, aimless introspection, something really unexpected happened. Something I could not have predicted in a million years. A set of strange circumstances that pretty much overnight led me to make the decision to fully, officially anchor myself by moving to the East End. No, more east. No, more east. Yup. Orléans. Everyone who knows me was shocked by this news, since I had left Orleans at 18 and never, ever thought I was going to move back there. Ever. It all happened very quickly, but strangely, unlike all of the other big life plans I'd been mentally spiraling trying to figure out, this, of all things, was an unbelievably easy decision to make. You see, the thing is, my sister lives in a semi-detached house in Orleans and has 3 kids, ages 1.5, 5, and 7. Her neighbor, who was a retired teacher, had been a constant source of help and support, and also had a son with high needs. So she understood what my sister was going through with my oldest nephew, and never complained about the sounds that travel across the shared wall. So when the first sale sign went up, I immediately thought, Auntie P needs to step in. I'm floating. I'm not going to school in the US anytime soon. I've been living out of my suitcases and in other people's things. And these kids aren't going to be this young forever. Plus, moving in would really help my sister and her husband out a lot. So, just like that, I was coming back to Orleans. It was a decision that was made with the heart first, and then the rest followed. And the rest involved a lot of paperwork. Anyone who's self-employed and has tried to get a mortgage knows that banks look at you with pure suspicion and disgust. So imagine, as a self-employed person who just spent the last 3 years half working, mostly traveling, and with my income from last year totaling $11,000, it became a family mission to help me get this house. I put down a down payment thanks to having sold my condo. And my mom had just downsized from her cute cottage, so she checked the debt-free box. And my sister's government job checked the steady employment box. So with both of them as cosigns, I was actually able to buy this house. After those few years floating around and having my whole life in storage, I was finally landing somewhere more permanent. And it became instantly clear that I would be able to use this new solid ground as a jumping off point. Returning to Orleans exactly 20 years after leaving definitely required me to reflect on some big identity questions. Questions like, does this make me boring now? And how much does the place I live actually impact my creative output? The reality is, there's a part of me that's felt so much more at ease ever since the move. You often hear that you have to trade comfort for growth, but I want to see if it's possible to have both. To see if I can feel grounded and at peace while still pushing myself and growing artistically. Traveling, leaving, disappearing, they all served a purpose, but now so does being home. Staying in Ottawa also means I have my band, my friends, and my community here. I don't have to reinvent my life from zero. I can build on what I already have. Maybe I just needed a break from everything, a major reset. I'm also happy to report I've been enjoying sign painting again, but this time under new terms and with a more streamlined approach. I'm more selective of the jobs I take on, and I officially close shop from November 1st to May 1st. Warm months will be dedicated to sign painting and commercial work, and the rest of the year I'll prioritize my own painting practice. And above all, I'm set on prioritizing my health. Now, over the last few months, as I contemplated my renewed Orleans identity, one question has come up a lot in my mind. What's a good life? Not to anyone else, but to me. Not to past versions of me, not to future versions of me, just to me right now. What makes me happy? What do I need to feel fulfilled? What do I need to create? But also, how can I show up for the people I love? Right now, a good life for me is having stability, having the right space to create, and being there for my family. I moved in on December 1st, and after doing some pretty important renos, I was able to build out my new studio. I even have a little office now. Amidst my traveling, I would always create these makeshift studios wherever I was, but I don't think I realized just how much I actually needed a proper space. A space where I can focus, feel secure, a place I can actually afford as a single income artist who doesn't have a partner to rely on financially or to split the bills with. And on top of that, a place where I'm useful and I can be there for my sister and my nibblings. I'm not where I thought I would be right now, and I have no clue how things will play out, but as my friend Alex May Hughes told me the other day, if the path ahead of you is clear, it's probably because you're on somebody else's. Interestingly, just as the purchase of the house was being finalized, I was invited to be part of a group show at De Montigny Contemporary here in Ottawa called Words Matter. It felt like a cosmic welcome home. I had ended my last ODC talk with a glimpse of what I was working on. Remember those pieces? Well, now 5 years later, I finally got to exhibit them publicly. This felt like a really big stepping stone, and the best part is, I feel like I'm just getting started. Now, a little plug, the exhibition is still on view until February 14th, so definitely check it out, make it your Valentine's Day date destination. And I've made sure to include the address and open hours on the little Valentines that I've made for everyone. And if you didn't get one, come get one at the merch table. You should all get one. Now, this exhibition also lit the fire under my ass to finally make some prints. A process that was started months and months ago, years, but that I never fully put into motion until this exhibition gave me a concrete reason to. And if you want to buy one, you can scan the QR code on the Valentine's. We'll bring you to the online shop. Now to wrap things up. If anything, burning myself out has taught me a lot about my nervous system and about balance. Even years later, I still feel the after effects and have to be really mindful of how much I take on. It taught me that the only way to have a sustainable career as a self-employed artist, even though it's so tempting to just go hard all the time because you never know if there'll be more work around the corner, is to really, really force yourself to create balance in your life through the simplest things. Sleep, nutrition, basketball, just the right amount of social interactions, and to always make time for your own creative practice. It's not easy. In the past, I would find every excuse not to make my own art. Sometimes I was truly being pulled in a lot of directions, but now I try to ask myself, am I being pulled or am I letting myself be pulled? There was also an element of fear or insecurity keeping me from doing that thing I really wanted to do, wondering how others would see me, and I've come to realize that caring about other people's opinion of you is a type of jail, one that's extremely hard to get out of. In the same vein, I like to remind myself that comparison is truly the thief of joy. So do you, and screw what anyone thinks. We're not here very long, and life is really too short to live by what you think others think that you should be. And even just saying that is exhausting. And with that, a final thought about age. I'm 38 years old, and I'm very much an oil painting late bloomer, among other things. I waited until I was in my 30s to try it because I was so afraid that if I sucked at it, I wouldn't be able to call myself a painter anymore. This nonsense, but tell that to my ego. A big reason why I never made my own art a priority until now is also because I've had to work, literally my entire life, to support myself. Or maybe that was my excuse. But in any case, I don't advise waiting as long as I did. If there's something creative you've always wanted to do, please go do it. Don't waste another minute. Leave right now. Go. Just kidding. But truly, we don't know how long we have. And in the spirit of my very first ODC talk, I want to end by showing you some of the pieces I've been working on as I share some final thoughts. Life's gonna life. It'll throw all kinds of things at you that you won't have control over. But no matter what, my advice is to pivot and keep finding a way to make your magic. As human beings, we have amazing abilities to create and to share our experiences and thoughts with each other. So let's not waste that. And whatever it is that you'd rather be doing, well, do everything in your power to do that thing. So thank you for being here and for listening. And thank you to the Ottawa Design Club for having me again. Thanks, everyone. Yo.